Good evening and welcome to Friends of Haystack Rock Nature Talks, exploring nature together. I'm Angela Benton and I just want to welcome everybody to this evening's presentation. It's a beautiful day in Cannon Beach and we really appreciate you all coming in out of the sunshine to enjoy this evening. We've got the elk herd over here and the sunshine over here. So I promise you this will be a very worthwhile evening. This evening, we're honored to have Roy Lowe, and Roy has a really interesting background that I just learned about, and that is he has been a refuge manager on the Oregon Island National Wildlife Refuge, which is near and dear to Friends of Haystack Rock. Haystack Rock is part of that refuge, and Roy was one of the refuge managers, having retired in 2015. But he worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife for over 37 years and as a public servant protecting our refuge system. I think we never can say thank you enough for that work because it's created the refuge system and protections for places like Haystack Rock. So this evening, Roy has a wonderful presentation. He's going to be talking to us about the Shorebirds, elegant travels on long distance journeys. And he has lots of experience in that space. And we'd just like to welcome you. Thanks for coming this evening.
Thank you. So as far as my career, I usually say I got paid to practice my passion. You know, I working in conservation, getting paid is really good thing. And I had a great career and got to do a lot of great things and got to see, some of the bad things, but a lot of good things that people are doing, like friends groups, educating the public, which goes a long ways in protecting our resources. So I appreciate the efforts that have gone on here for 30 some years. I lost track, but it's a long time.
About that.
So tonight I want to talk about shorebirds, and I like the sun, but right now I wish it was dark. It's gonna be a little tough to see the screen, but so these are windburls, and these birds breed in Arctic and fly as far south as South America. And you'll see them on the beaches here. So there are 9 primary flyways for shorebirds on the planet, and notice in Alaska here there's 4 overlapping flyways. So some birds are going to Asia, many more are coming down to North America and South America. And then there's another concentration of area here in Russia where a lot of overlap in flyways. So, okay. So, shorebirds migrate all across our continent, but we're pretty fortunate on the coast here because it concentrates birds along the coastline here. So we see huge numbers in the right conditions moving up and down the beach. And oftentimes it's a flock of one species. These are all western sandpipers. And oftentimes they're flying, just above the surface of the shoreline. And these 2 are all western sandpipers. And so it's really fun to watch these. And if you're a good birder, you can pick out different species. It's easier if you take a photograph and then blow it up on your computer and look at them. But there's mostly western sandpipers in here, and then some bigger birds like that's a dunlin, and so we'll see mixed flocks of birds. Okay. Here's another mixed flock of birds. And again, I'm sorry for the light, it's hard to see, but this lead bird is a sanderling. And then we've got some right here and up here. It's a semi-palmated plover. You can see a little neck color on this bird. And then most of those are western sandpipers. And then some smaller ones in here. That's a least sandpiper, little tiny guy. So, okay. This is a little bit easier to see the different size here. These bigger birds with the long bills look kind of reddish are long-billed dowitchers. And so we don't see them on the beach too much, but in migration, they're flying back and forth. They'll occasionally land, but they're mostly moving to other areas. And then most of the rest are western sandpipers, and there are some least in there as well. Okay. So I want to start off with the world record holder species. This is a bar-tailed godwit. These birds are incredible. They breed in western Alaska and along the North Slope. They congregate on the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta to gain fat and get ready to migrate. And they migrate nonstop to New Zealand and Australia across the open Pacific. It's phenomenal. So next slide. So this is a breeding area that I visited about 2 hours outside of Nome, Alaska, and that's all tundra there. And that's a Nome breeding area, and we stomped around out there, me and a couple of friends, and we couldn't find them. They're probably there, but that's tundra. So every footstep you sink 8 inches like a sponge, and then these roots and stuff grab you. So, man, it was arduous hiking out there. So we didn't see them out there, but it's like the researchers know where they're at. So the USGS was marking birds. So the birds that go to Australia, New Zealand, they put satellite tags on them. That's how they figured out it was a nonstop route. So I thought, well, what did the young of the year birds do? Because in most shorebirds, the adults abandon the young at their nesting location, often before they can even fly, and the adults take off and migrate. So the young, it's genetically encoded how and where they're supposed to go. So I thought, well, what are these young of the year Bartel godwits doing? And this bird is about 3 weeks old, and it's going to migrate when he's about 4 months old. So I said, okay, let's see if we can get a satellite transmitter on this bird. It's got a leg band there, B6 right here, colored leg band. But the issue is they have to put a harness on it, and this bird is going to triple in size before it migrates. So they put these harnesses on that are really loose so that they would grow into it, and they just cross their fingers. Well, they did 3 birds, and 2 birds dropped their harness right away and 2 loose. This bird kept his on, and boy, it turned out to be phenomenal. 4 months of age, it left the YK Delta, and it flew 8,425 miles nonstop. And it was probably in a flock of other juveniles, but how did it know where to go? I mean, it was over open ocean. Down here, apparently it crossed over several islands, but didn't stop. And what's really interesting is down here it said, it made a sharp right turn. How did it know to do that? Because if it kept going, it'd be in Antarctica, and that'd be all over. So about 65 to 70% of these birds that breed in Alaska go to New Zealand, and the rest go to Eastern Australia. And so this bird was 11 days, 1 hour, a nonstop flight.
They don't stop to eat?
No, and that's what this slide is about. What they do is they put on absolutely as much fat as they can, and then they absorb 25% of their liver, kidneys, and digestive system to make more room for fat. Yeah. And during migration, they increase the size of their heart and their breast muscles. So they have to do this twice a year. Can you imagine humans go through this sort of thing? So absolutely amazing how this has developed over the eons. How did the birds ever learn to do this nonstop thing? It's pretty fascinating. Okay. So like coffee, these shorebirds come in various sizes. So the Trenta is a marbled godwit. The Venti is a red knot, and then the Grandie is a Western sandpiper. This is the largest shorebird in the world. That's in the foreground. It's a Eurasian curlew, and because of its name, it's found in Europe and Asia. It weighs up to 3 pounds, and that egret behind it is a little egret, which is really closely related to snow egret, and it's about the same size as snow egret. So this is a huge shorebird. Next. You contrast that with the world's smallest shorebird that we have in North America, the leaf sandpiper. It weighs 0.8 ounces, and it migrates from the Arctic to northern South America. So talk about incredible. If you could mail this bird, it'd only take 1 stamp. Okay.
Good line.
This is our largest shorebird in North America, the long-billed curlew, and we see a few of these on the beach. They're more inland, but we see a few on the beach in migration, and they go to as far as northern Central America. Okay. And this gives you a good size comparison between a dowitcher and a Western sandpiper. So you see the size difference, but also note the difference in their bill length. So they can be feeding, which these two are, right next to each other and not competing, because that dowitcher is going down really deep feeding, and that Western sandpiper is not going as deep, and the leaf sandpiper going even less. So they can be different species feeding in the same area, not directly competing. Here's another size comparison. That's a wimbrel, and you see this Western sandpiper would fit nicely inside of it. So a lot of times when the birds are migrating, they'll fall out on our beaches, and they literally plow the beach. So all this rough soil has been turned over by these birds pecking. And so if you, like the best time to watch shorebirds along the Oregon coast is the last week of April, first week of May. That's when the huge migration is going through, or in August when birds are coming back through. If you get down on the beach early in the morning, you see them working the beach. It's just amazing. They just plowing the beach as they're foraging. Okay. This is a long-billed curlew, and I was watching it feed in the pasture, and it was feeding around this milk thistle in the background. It's kind of going at an angle, poking in, and next. Push this. It's hard to see, but it's got this interesting larval of some invertebrate, and it's got these two little arms that's hanging on the bill, hanging on for dear life, which lasted about another second. But next photo. And this is one of the long-billed curlews that has been wintering all year at Alsea Bay. We don't normally have them wintering along the coast like that, but there's been 3 or 4 at Alsea Bay, and you can see he's got that bill all the way buried and his face buried up to his eyes. Next slide.
How does it know if there's something down there?
Pardon me?
How does it know if there's something down there and we're?
I'll tell you in a minute. And so he's got some invertebrate here. I have no idea what it is, but pretty impressive. Okay. So to answer your question, this is a dowitcher. What I wanted to show you is the upper bill is actually flexible, the tip. And so they can open that. So think about this dowitcher. He has a bill all the way down in the mud. If he finds an invertebrate, he would have to try to open his entire bill against the pressure of that mud, but he can just do the tip to grab it. So all shorebirds have flexible upper bill like that. Most shorebirds, not all of them. And this upper bill is also loaded with all these nerve cells for detecting prey, and it can also detect pressure. So when he's stabbing around, if it feels pressure, it indicates it might be an invertebrate, a food item next to it, and then he'll pursue that, or she. The lower bill also has quite a few nerve endings, but not as many as the upper bill. This is a marble godwit. We see these on the beach in fall and spring migration. Not a lot of them, but if you look hard enough, you can see them. Next photo. And so I watch these guys feeding on the beach, and they're keeping an eye on the waves sloshing and out. And they'll go along and they'll be sampling. All of a sudden they'll get excited and they'll kind of turn in circles because it's detected something. Next slide. And that here's he's working around in circles. Next slide. And he pulls up this nice sandworm, this polychaete. And so it's pretty fun to watch him do that. This is a whimbrel, and these birds are usually very wary. So when I try to get photos of them on the beach, I don't look at them and I kind of walk at angles, and yet they're like, uh-oh, he's up to something, So this morning, this bird let me get right up close to it. If you look at its face, it has that kind of stressed look. I think this is just after sunrise, and I think it had been flying all night, and it was really tired, and its defenses were down because I got really close, took some pictures, and then snuck away from it. But typically, it's tough to get close to these guys. They love to eat mole crabs, which are very abundant on our beaches, and sometimes they get on the large size. And this guy, I think he's probably sorry after he got this one down, but it's a lot easier to swallow smaller ones. But so this is an American avocet, and we don't get to see these on the coast very often. They're pretty rare on the coast. You can see them in the Willamette Valley and Eastern Oregon. Notice it has a recurved bill, so it's curved upwards, and it's pretty dainty looking bill. They don't probe with it. They swipe it in the water back and forth and get plankton. So you see them go along back and forth getting plankton. So in hyper saline environments like San Francisco Bay salt ponds, Lake Abert, Eastern Oregon, Great Salt Lake, they routinely swim in those hyper saline environments, feeding and stuff. Go ahead, next slide. I was at the mouth of Galveston Bay, and these birds were roosting on the land and then flying out in the surf and feeding, not big surf, but I was amazed. Next photo. And they were handling these waves perfectly. It just totally blew me away. I had no idea they were capable of doing that, but apparently there was a lot of plankton that was drawing them there, and there was several of them there. Next photo. Those are all avocets. And if you look on a map on Galveston Bay, a lot of birds are flying from Central America or Yucatan Peninsula, crossing the Gulf of Mexico, and they're basically hitting the shoreline in this location.
Did you say these are all avocets?
Those are all American avocets. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
It's phenomenal because I'm used to seeing, 10 or 20 on some areas and so Bolivar Peninsula is a big, well-known birding area. A lot of people go there because of the shorebirds that stack up there. Okay. What I found was interesting is all these avocets were sleeping and all these other shorebirds were going underneath them and foraging underneath them like they were in a forest or something. And it wasn't bothering avocets at all. So it's really pretty unique. Okay. So here's a comparison between, this is a western sandpiper, a juvenile bird, and this is a least sandpiper, a juvenile bird. And you can see the least, that's bill is much smaller, maybe half as long as the western sandpiper. It also has yellowish greenish legs, which is another easy way. A lot of people, if they don't know birds very well, they have a hard time separating these two species because they look pretty similar. And if they're mixed in a mixed flock, it's kind of tough to pick them out. But once you learn the characters, you can do that. And this is a western sandpiper. Now this is breeding plumage. It's got all these red feathers that are coming in and black feathers, and he's probing along in the sand. Okay. And they eat a lot of different things, most of which I can't identify, but this guy's got a small worm that he's extracting from the substrate. Okay. And this leaf sandpiper, you can't see, but it's a little amphipod. I'm not exactly sure which species, but it's got this little amphipod, and you see the yellow legs in that. That's a least. And then this is a red knot, and it's probably tough to see back there because of the light, but he's got this little clear blob at the end of its bill. And I see shorebirds eating a lot of these little translucent blobs, and I'm not sure what they are. One person suggested to me it might be a ctenophore. I have my notes here, but it's like a gooseberry or something like that. But I don't know if they're that small, and wouldn't think they'd be in the sand. So I think it's something else, but.
And they're completely clear.
Yeah.
They're usually the gooseberries are about the size of a marble.
Yeah, the pictures I've seen.
And
See them here.
yeah,
Yeah,
I've
so
not seen a shorebird eat them, but doesn't mean.
And these, and they're all this size. They're all really small. So we need help to identify what this is. Okay, next slide. This is a sanderling, and when they get a large prey out, shorebirds will run away from the rest of the flock because they don't want to lose it. And he's got a really nice, I think it's a glass shrimp. And next slide. This one has a mo crab that's partially torn apart, and it's sprinting away, and it got a little bit farther. Next slide. And this guy came up behind it, just ran into him, trying to get him to drop it. And these shorebirds look kind of dainty, but I see this all the time where they're running into each other, trying to get them to drop prey. And it's hard to photograph in a flock because you don't know when it's going to happen. You just got to shoot a bunch of pictures. I saw this guy sprinting down the beach. I go, okay, I know somebody's going to come after him. And here's two western sandpipers fighting over a little amphipod right here. So they're doing a little tug of war. So you're all probably familiar with sanderlings on our beaches. They run in and out with the waves. They run out to the deepest part or the wettest part, and then they come back, and then the wave's going to overtake them. They run back. So I get people going, yeah, I was down at the beach and I saw 60 snowy plovers running in and out with the waves. And I'm going, don't think they're snowy plovers. I'm pretty sure they're sanderlings. Next photo.
Where are they from? Because we saw them.
The sanderlings?
Yeah.
They nest in a far northern Arctic of Canada. If you look at Canada's map, they're way at the top, and they're one of the latest nesters because it's the last place to thaw out. So they're a late.
So is it possible that's what we're seeing today up on?
If they're running back and forth. Here are this is a flock of sanderlings roosting, and here are 4 snowy plovers. So you can see the size difference.
And where did he go?
Who?
This end.
Some of them go as far as southern South America. Some winter here. They're tagging them with if you have binoculars and you see sanderlings on the beach, look, because they have little colored flags. Some of them do, and even if you can't read what's on the flag, the color says what country it was tagged in. And a couple from Peru have been seen on Clatsop Spit, and so anyway, this just shows you the difference between the two birds. You see the browner backs on the plovers, and they got this neck collar and light colored legs compared to dark legs. And sometimes snowy plovers, if they're around, will join sanderlings, and they're kind of run out with them. But then the plovers just kind of spread out, and they're not really going in and out with the waves. So So that's what I do to try to tell people. It's like, if you're seeing these birds running out routinely, they're sanderlings. And you all probably know that snowy plovers breed on certain parts of our beaches. It's a species that was in real trouble in the 1993. There were 50 left on the Oregon coast, and it was declared a threatened species. And so people have worked for decades bringing this bird back. And so they're now nesting again in Clatsop County, Tillamook County, where they've been extirpated, and the population's up to like 600 in Oregon. So, but it's a tough place to nest on our beaches. Next slide. You know, these little teeny chicks are threatened by gulls and crows and ravens and people and you name it. So it's a tough place. Yeah, dogs. And our beaches are way smaller than they used to be because that European beach grass was introduced and shore pines and all these other things. So our beaches used to be massive, and now they're these little tiny things where everybody's concentrated on. Okay. So, you know, there's a lot of marking that has gone on over time with color bands. And so the bird in the upper left was hatched at Willapa Bay, Graveyard Spit at Willapa Bay in 2017. And I saw it every year after that in the wintertime in a flock of wintering birds at Bayshore in Walport, so mouth of the Alsea Bay. And the bird on the right was actually born in New River on the southern Oregon coast in 2017. And then the next spring, it was found nesting at Humboldt Bay, south spit of Humboldt Bay. And every year it nested there, and it joined this other bird in the flock at Walport and at Alsea Bay at the Bayshore Spit. This guy disappeared in December of 22, just vanished. And the other one made it back in the spring of 22, back to the breeding ground, and then it disappeared. So the bird the bird at the bottom, it's tough to see. It's got two white bands and a pink band and a green band. This bird hatched in 2019 at Camp Pendleton in San Diego. And the next year I saw it in Newport. And so every year since, it's been in either Newport or Walport breeding. And I talked to the researcher who abandoned this in San Diego, and he said, this is really interesting because we don't see this bird in wintertime, but it shows up on a beach in San Diego for 3 weeks in April. And then you tell me you see it next in Newport. So he said, he's almost certain this bird is wintering in Baja. And so I'm thinking, what a smart bird. It spends a winter in Baja, 3 weeks in San Diego, and then when the weather's nice, it comes into Oregon. So I like challenges, and this is a bird that apparently has lost its color marker. It's only got a metal band, and this metal band is the size of an eraser on the number 2 pencil, so they're really small. There's 4 numbers on the upper part of the band and 5 on the bottom, and so you can, it's tough to see, but there's a 3 here and a 4, and so I decided I was going to take enough photos that I could read the band, and I spent 2 days. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze here. I spent 2 days laying on my belly taking hundreds of photos of this bird, and finally got all the sequence I needed. And it's a great story. This bird was born in or hatched in here 2015 at the mouth of the Eel River, just south of Humboldt Bay, California. And it had blue tape around that band. That's all it had for color marker. And it had a sibling that was marked the same way. The researchers went back a week later, and its sibling was gone. And the dad, which the dad's cared for the young, the dad had abandoned this bird, just left it. And there was another dad nearby, had 2 young that were a week older, and he adopted it. And he raised it, and he kept holding back his chicks so this guy could catch up. He delayed fledging of his own fledglings, and then they all fledged. And then the bird was never seen again until I read the band 5 years later on the beach, because it lost its color tape. And so it was a great story. And we wouldn't have known if I hadn't spent the time laying on my belly on the beach. Okay. This is a similar bird. This is a semi-palmated plover. And you see he's showing that he's semi-palmated here by raising that foot for us. Got a partial web. And this is a hatch-year bird. It's just, you know, several months old, pretty much brownish. Adults will, this will all be black here, and they'll have a really nice eye ring. And so you can tell first-year birds on the beach. So next photo shows an adult. See that yellow eye ring and the black, and pretty specific. Okay. So if you watch these birds, they'll run along the beach, stop, and then they'll grab something. Next photo. So here he's running, he stopped. Next photo. And he grabs some food item. Next photo. But if you look really close, they're not really just standing there. See, he's got his foot slightly raised. And what he's doing is we call foot trembling. He takes that foot and he just shakes it, moving it forward, and it disturbs the ground and makes invertebrates move. And that's how he captures his food, he or she. This is a video. You'll see those things shaking their little foot, just one leg right here. They stop, shake the leg, grab something. Pretty unique. And
What do you think it's worth?
semi-palmated plover.
And what does the shaking of the foot accomplish?
It disturbs the ground and makes the item move. Sometimes it attracts worms to actually come up. That movement makes the prey item move, and that's when they spot it. So you'll see them, they're looking and okay. So this actually should be called it should be called a seabird because this is a phalarope. This is a redneck phalarope, and they spend their entire winter out to sea on the ocean. Really amazing for a little bird like this. This is one in fall, winter plumage. Next shot. And breeding plumage, this is you can see it's looking pretty sharp. I hazard to guess that in migration, you can see these guys out on the sewage ponds here because they oftentimes attract phalaropes. Okay. And this is a hatchier bird, maybe 3 months old. And I show this picture because you can see it has different toes. They're really big lobbed toes for all the swimming that they do. So these guys are, heading to South America and staying offshore the whole winter. And these are red phalaropes. And I don't know if you've ever seen them feed, it makes me dizzy. But what they're doing here is they're causing a vortex, which brings plankton up. And so by causing that current, it brings food items up to them. They apparently don't have an inner ear because they swim off in a great direction. Okay. So we have two species of yellow legs. This is the greater yellow legs, and they both have yellow legs. One's bigger and one's smaller. Next photo. Here are three greater yellow legs. And if you look, their bill is just slightly recurved, just a little curve upward. And that's a great indicator. If you see that and believe it, it's a greater. And also note the base of their bill is really light colored. So the next photo shows a lesser yellow legs, and see it's a straight sort of needle type of a bill. So that's a really good way to separate those two. Okay. And here you see both of them together. The greater at the top, you see slight recurved, heavier bill, and on the bottom, more of a needle-like bill. And of course, if they're together, you can see a size difference. What's interesting about greater yellowlegs is they love fish, which really surprised me. And this thing I watched in Alcee Bay, it's running underwater chasing fish. The back of it's out of the water, but you see it's very successful at catching fish. Next photo. This one was at Ona Beach State Park, and this is where Beaver Creek flows out across the beach. And this bird was actively hunting this area, and it caught this nice big fish, swallowed it down, thought, okay, he's done. He went right back to foraging, looking for more. So pretty amazing. This is a bird that was picking off three-spined stickleback in a pasture. So there was this big pond out there, seasonal pond, and it was catching all sorts. And so apparently what happened is the whole area flooded and these fish were brought in and they were stranded there. And so it was heyday for this guy. So these are what we term rock pipers, the sandpipers that we find using the rocks. You can see some of these at Haystack Rock. You only find them in the rocky intertidal areas, and that, at high tide, there's nothing to eat, so they roost. And their color really hides them well on the rock. Now, I'm right on top of these birds, point my camera at it, but you could easily miss these. In fact, there's a funny story here. I was down at the 804 trail in Yachats, and I was walking along the trail, and I saw surf scoters diving. I thought, well, maybe I can get some good photos. They were ways out there. So I'm taking photos of the surf scoters, and this guy walks up to me and goes, hey, what are you taking photos of? I said, oh, I'm taking photos of those surf scoters. And he goes, well, what are those birds right there? And I had not seen them. They were right there. And so being the upstanding guy, I acted like I knew they were there. And I said, oh, those are black turnstones and surf birds. But, they were right on top of me. I like 15 feet away. So these are all, oops, go back. These are all black turnstones, the darker birds. And then these are surf birds. And then there's a ringer right here. This is a rock sandpiper. And we have rock sandpipers running along the Oregon coast, but very small numbers. We don't get to see them often. You have to really look through a lot of the these other species to find them. A little bit smaller, but very cool bird. Okay. And here's a surfbird on the left and a black turnstone on the right. And that black turnstone is getting into his really looking good looking breeding plumage. Next. And here's a surfbird on the right and a rock sandpiper here. And you see they generally look pretty similar, different size, there's different coloration, but people could easily overlook the rock sandpiper. When they fly, you have no problem seeing them. There's all this white on their tail. Most of the birds in this flock are surf birds, and then you see this is a black turnstone, way more white stripes and stuff. But you'll be walking along and not see them, all of a sudden you see this flash, and they're up flying. Okay. Here's another photo. You see these are all black turnstones. You see how brightly streaked they are. And then the surf birds here, and then these are the rock sandpipers. There's 3 of them here. And you know, you can tell size difference, but you also look at the tail pattern. These have a black terminal band with the white rump, and they used to have a black stripe. So you don't get to see many rock sandpipers, so I was lucky to get one flying. And then the underside is really dramatic. This is a surf bird showing the white on the wing photo. And this is a black turnstone, really, really brightly colored. And they forage in the mussel and barnacle beds along, pulling out different food items. Slide. This guy's got a pretty good sized prey item. And then I said there, you know, you find them in the rocky intertidal, but during spring migration, you'll find 1 or 2 along the beach or with other flocks of birds. So they're migrating along, maybe they get tired and they just kind of hang out on the beach. So typically you don't get to see them in the beach situation except for that spring migration. So surfbirds are, it's a good name for these birds. I was watching them and they could tell when a wave was going to be dangerous enough that they'd have to jump. So I was waiting for on this wave, they're all going to jump up and I get the picture. And they knew that the wave wasn't going to sweep them off the rock and they just held their ground and the wave swept over them. That was really amazing. Next photo. But since it's springtime, they all started fighting over foraging territory. So there's a fight going on here now, one over here. And so hormones are flowing, you know, and they're getting a little testy. This is a wandering tattler, and it's another bird that we only find in the rocky intertidal areas. And these guys nest along streams in Alaska, and some of them nest in eastern Siberia, but they all come this way down to North America, and as far as they're going to winter as far as South America. And you find them, you know, you stand on the dinner table here, mussel bed. Okay. And here's another shot, and this is a bird that's in breeding plumage, so that they get all this barring and stuff. That's their fancy plumage for them. Next photo. And this is actually a young of the year, but the wintry birds look very similar to this, where they're mostly gray with a white belly, so kind of subdued colors. Next photo. And when they fly, there's no big flash. There's not a whole lot to see. So if you see a bird like this that's all gray when it flies, it's going to be this guy. It's not going to be one of the other ones. So it's easy to tell. They also have a really unique call. So if you hear them call, you don't have to see them. You can tell who they are. And I'm sure you're all familiar with one of our local residents, black oyster catcher. Very, very cool birds. Next slide. This is the dad. He's got, this chick is less than a day old, and he's got another one that's pipping underneath him here. And this is the mom, and she's got some mussel meat she's taken out of the shell, and she's going to feed this little guy down here. But what I want to point out is she's got this braided Dacron fishing line wrapped around her foot, and it's amputated one of her toes. And we've seen this bird now for 3 years, and it appears to be doing okay. So I don't, you know, the hazards of being in an intertidal zone with line that's lost and things like that, but she's making a go of it. Even that toe is totally healed over. What's fun about in the fall is aging black oyster catchers. The young of the year look different. You can see here, see the grayish end of the bill, and this is all orange, and it's kind of tough to see in this light, but you can't see the eye ring here. It's just barely present, the orange eye ring, and the iris is a real faded yellow. And then you look at the adult and see that nice orange eye ring and the bright yellow iris, so you can tell it's an adult.
Can you show us
Go back
to tell male and female?
Yeah, go back, please. So this is a female because she's got, it's not a perfectly round pupil. It's got a little dimple off of it. Go back to the slide, please. And that one is perfectly round. That would be the male. So obviously, if you see them copulate, it's an easy way to tell, but but it should be like, it's not guaranteed, but but yeah, if you look at the oyster catchers, you'll see that little dimple. It's pretty interesting. Okay. So back. So I told you how to identify them. So all I have to do is see this eye and that one back there, and I can tell it's a juvenile. Faded yellow. Can't really see an iris much. So just seeing that, you can tell it's a young of the year. So next fall, when you see when they start flocking up for winter, take a look and you'll be able to do that.
So the one on the left would be a female, this one over here.
Yes.
And then the one in the middle would be a male.
Yeah, and this is looking like it's gonna be a female. It's got a really huge dimple. Or whatever. Okay. So there are 6 species of shorebirds in this photo. Can you identify them all? Okay, so the easy ones are those red knots. And then all these are western sandpipers. See red on the head here. These are sanderlings. There's the black turnstone joining the flock, black-bellied plovers, and then there's a dunlin trying to hide back here. So, so there's 6 species there, and you see this in the springtime during migration. But what I wanted to point out is the coloration of these birds get really pretty fancy. It's like, really? And for some species like dunlin, you can't tell male from female. They both have this beautiful plumage. So what's up with that? Next photo. Here's a dunlin in winter plumage. Breeding plumage, pretty dramatic difference. Next photo. This is an American golden plover, juvenile. There's the fancy looking adult. This is a Pacific golden plover, juvenile. There's the adult. Next photo. There's our little sanderling, a little white tennis ball. Next photo. Here's the male, and these are female. So they're looking really snazzy. So if you travel up to their breeding ground on the Arctic coastline, you start to get a clue as to what's going on here. That's what it looks like in mid-June when the birds are displaying and laying eggs, building nests, laying eggs, incubating eggs. This is what the habitat looks like. Next photo. And a lot of the ground cover looks like this. It looks just like the feathers on those birds. You got blacks, you got these oranges, you got kind of cream color. These are all different kinds of lichens and small plants. Okay. So things like dowitchers, kind of just blend in. This is a red phalarope. Now, phalaropes, there's a number of shorebirds, but phalaropes reverse roles. So the female has the beautiful plumage, the male is subdued. The female initiates courtship. The female initiates copulation. She lays eggs, and then she's out of there. And the male incubates and raises the chicks. And then she'll go and find another male and say, hey, be my boyfriend. And so she may lay another clutch, but the females don't participate in the raising of the young at all. So next photo shows the male. So you see how him sitting on a nest would be much less obscure when it's sitting in brown vegetation than she would, where she's all bright. So, okay. So there's a nest, and you can see when that male just sits down there real low and lays his head down, they just kind of vanish. So this is a red phalarope, and we see these mostly during fall migration when they're mostly white. They're not red. We see a few in the wintertime. I mean, it's in springtime, but they're mostly offshore. And if we have a big storm in November, December, a lot of these are found on the beach, or they'll find them out on the road. They get blown off the ocean, these huge storms. And the redneck phalarope is already in South America by then, so they're gone. So if you see a phalarope, if there's a wreck of phalaropes in November, December, they're going to be red phalaropes.
So on these migrations, are they mixed migrations that different species migrate together?
Not generally, no.
But they
On the beaches, they congregate on the beach.
So they're flying together as a group.
Yeah.
The species group.
Right.
And then they meet on the beaches.
Yeah, and they'll go a certain distance with other birds, but they're looking for all these. Okay, next photo. So this is the redneck phalarope, and this is the female, better looking plumage, and she's initiating the courtship here. Next photo. And the male obliges on the population. Next photo. And this was taken in mid-July, so about a month later near Nome, further south, where there's not 24 hours of sunlight. So you can see green up is already really going on here. Next photo. And there we found these nests all around those little wetland ponds. They were right next to the edge of the water. So there's the distribution. The orange is where redneck phalaropes breed, and look at their wintering locations. This is kind of a dangerous place to be right now. And then over here, so totally at sea. These birds will cross, the redneck will cross all across the continent. You could end up seeing some, but they're going to the coast. Most of them come down the coastline, but pretty amazing. This is pectoral sandpiper. This is a male, and the males have these big air sacs that they can inflate to try to impress the female. And they have this really cool hunting call that they make, and it echoes across the tundra. You'll hear these going on simultaneously. It's really cool. Okay. And they'll fly around with that sack hanging down too. I wasn't able to capture a picture. It's partially extended, but if you see these birds, you're more likely to see these birds maybe around the sewage pond than on the beach. But you can't see any sign of that sack. It's just it's not shown when they're in the winter period. But cool to see this. They're flying around, protecting their territory. In this case, the males have nothing to do with the chicks. The female does everything in this species. But they do battle other males over territory, and so there's some pretty fierce battle. He's ripped some feathers out of this bird up on top there. So you see all these battles going on. Next photo. And if he entices a female, he'll strut around with his sack hanging out and saying, "Hey, look at my territory. You should get with me and try to get her to nest in this area." And this is one of the typical follow me things. I got too close to a nest, and the female came out, and she's trying to act like she's wounded to lead me away from the nest. So as soon as I saw this, I carefully watched where I was walking and left the area. So this is a semi-palmated sandpiper, and this bird flies up to, it's a male, flies up to do its display, and it hovers like a kingfisher or a white-tailed kite, and it gives its call. And I'm going to play the call here. It sounds really mechanical to me. I wouldn't have been able to guess what that was if I had not gone there to see myself. Like, what is that? Okay. And, fierce battles over territory. This is a nest we found up on a little bit higher ground. It's all pretty flat there along the Arctic coastline, but a little bit higher ground. So this is a bird that I photographed in Nome, and I was walking around, and it was just walking ahead of me and stuff. I'm getting these great pictures, and then I'm trying to figure out what is this bird doing? It's so friendly. And then it stopped, and I looked, and I could see plastic on the ground. I'm going, I'm up here in the middle of this wilderness. We have plastic pollution, and then it stepped up and hummed, and the plastic pollution was on its legs. So it's got 3 color bands here, a flag that says JLO, and a metal band up here. And this is believed to be a male. And this was banded in 2013 when it was at least 2 years old. So we don't know how old it was, but it was at least 2 years old in 2013. And I contacted a researcher at Market. She's really excited because I was there in 2018 after her study was over. Say, hey, this bird's here. I think it's yours. And so we got to talking, and I sent her the coordinates of where I saw this bird, and it was like 10 to 20 meters from where she abandoned it in 2013. So it's coming right back to where it was marked. Next photo. And so that was pretty fun to learn about this bird. And she told me that the mate to this bird, they put a geolocator tag on. Little tag they put on the leg, and that geolocator has a clock and a calendar in it, and it records light. And so if it records when dawn and dusk is, and if you know what time it is and what date it is, it'll tell you what latitude you're at, which is really pretty cool. And if you know that the midpoint gives you longitude. So this theory was developed in 1530. It was just a theory because it was 2 more centuries before there was accurate clocks to be able to see if it worked. So somebody was really smart back in 1530 to develop this. So the trick about this is you have to recapture the bird and take that off and download the stuff to your computer. So with birds like this that go back to the same exact location, you have a good chance of doing that. And that's what they did. So the next photo will show its flight path. So here it was nesting up here, going down British Columbia, cutting over, down the center of the country, down through Galveston Bay, and then down to, looks like Panama, and then back pretty much along the same route. And, pretty cool, because the next photo will show you what the field guides tell you where they're at, and that matches pretty good. So you can see they do, the yellow is migration, blue is wintering. We do in the fall get semi-palmated sandpipers and flocks here like that bird. If you look through enough of these flocks, you'll find some, and those are all juvenile birds that don't quite have the right wiring yet to figure out where they're going. And so we see them in the fall, but we don't see them in the spring. I've seen one in 30 years. They by the springtime, they're following everybody else up. It's the main flyway. Okay. This is a different bird. This is a don't tell me. Barred sandpiper, and it was nesting in this kind of gravel area with this dried vegetation. So its coloration matched pretty good to where it was nesting. And when it did its display, it would fly up really high, calling until almost out of sight, and then it would crash back to earth. And so there's the coloration. Pretty cool bird. And now in the fall, we routinely see small numbers of these birds. And if you see a flock of shorebirds on the beach, look on the upper end. They always stay up the highest on the beach. They'll be next to the flock, but they'll always be the highest. They're a little bit bigger, and their wings extend beyond their tail. Other shorebirds don't do that. So that's one way to tell them. And again, they're juvenile birds that they're not adults. They're juvenile birds that don't have the wiring down yet. Next slide. You see where their normal migration route is. So they're Arctic breeder, and then they're basically going down through the central part of the country. And so we don't see them in the springtime. They're going back up in the center. Again, birds in Siberia are coming our way. This is a really cool bird. This is a buff-breasted sandpiper, and this bird forms leks like sage grouse. So the males, they all get out in this area and they all display, trying to attract females. Look who's looking the best. And this is the only bird, the only shorebird in North America that forms leks. The only other two in the world are great snipe and ruffs in Europe and Asia. So pretty special. Next photo. So they're up doing their displays and stuff. And if one male wanders too close to another one, the first thing he'll do is warn them by throwing his one wing up, and then the battle's on. Next photo. And it's pretty fierce. Next photo. They really go back at body slamming and so forth. But next photo. Another bird that goes down to the middle of the country. So we get a few fall sightings. There was one last year near Beaver Creek, and I'm sure they see a few up here. So occasionally we see them in the fall, but not always, and not in the springtime. They're basically a grassland bird. So they're going down here in the Pampas area of Argentina. So they're in wet grasslands more than mud flats and marshes and stuff like that. And you see it's a far north nesters. It's American golden plover. This is a male. This is a species where you can tell the difference in their plumage. Next photo. This is female, so you can see some differences here. And there was one day we were up on the Arctic coastline, and it was, one of those days where it's all gray out, and we were looking right into the sun, and this bird is flying at me, and it's flapping really slow. And I go, it looks like a pigeon, and then is it a tern? No, I couldn't figure it out, and I didn't recognize the call. And then it passed me. Next slide. And it was an American golden plover. And normally these things have really rapid wing beat and stuff, but that was this display flight to attract the female to a territory that's really slow flapping. Next slide. See, that's a really exaggerated. They don't normally lift their wings that high when they're flying. So next photo. So it's going to be tough because lighting is here, but this is a movie, and this is the bird right here, the little black dot. So if you see the flapping, and it's going to repeat. It's going to repeat again. So right there, really sad, slow flapping. Really pretty bizarre for a plover. Okay. When the birds arrive up there, it's pretty cold, pretty snowy, a lot of frozen ground. But next slide, they're able to find lots of grubs and different things in the substrate. All the ponds, the bottoms are still frozen. Some of the surfaces are still frozen, but they're perfectly at home with this area. Okay. And this is a Dunlin, of course, and it was making its call, but it was flying a big circular motion over its habitat, over its territory. And let's play that audio. Higher pitched than that, at least, I mean, okay. And we watched these two males fighting on the road. We suspect they were two males because they were fighting over something, and we know what that was, but they totally ignored us. They were just bad in the next photo. And just really going for it. I'm standing right there and they're acting like I'm not even there. Next photo. You see there's a photographer there. His lens was actually too big, they were too close. And they were ripping feathers out and stuff. Next photo. And then here's a little video that showed you chasing each other around. There's no humans in the picture. At one point, they ran right at me, and I thought they were going between my legs, and they went about a foot. You see, it's still pretty cold there. It snowed one day. We finally got tired of watching, we left. I mean, it just kept going on.
So does it usually end when one flies away, or how?
Yeah, eventually somebody gives up.
So is this the territory of one of the birds?
Yeah, right around here.
Very-
I think it was easier to fight on the road than out on the tundra. But I mean, they'll be nesting like, there'll be a nest right there and nest over them. It's pretty amazing. It's shorebirds kind of lose their fear of people up there. I think they just don't relate to it up there. And so you're standing right there and they're doing their thing, it's really fun to be able to see them like that. Okay. So I was walking through the tundra here, and this bird raised its wing, and initially I thought, oh, it's going to be a display, and I realized it was one wing, and it was trying to get me to follow it, like, get the hell out of here. So then I was careful, and then I realized I spotted the bird that was on the nest. And I was looking, she's looking, where is it? These birds are well camouflaged, and the reason we can see the bird is it actually stood up on the nest. When it was sitting down, I did not have a clue. The nest, it's right here. See, there's a little eyeball, right? Little black eyeball right there. There's the tail. Next photo, here's a close-up. So you see how well camouflaged they are. It has some bright colors on the beach, but they work really great here. So this is outside of Nome, and it's a rocky sort of area, sparse vegetation. Next photo. Great place for a surf bird. And look at those feathers. Those little white and yellow feathers kind of match the buttercups. And I mean, it's really the dark lichen, the dark feathers. So it works really well, and explains why they look like they do. And in that same kind of rolling tundra habitat, some of the pollinated plovers were nesting here as well. This is an American gold. No, this is a Pacific golden plover. Okay. And this is a wintering bird. And so these birds winter in Hawaii, a lot of islands in Hawaii and downtown Honolulu. They're on ball fields, the city parks, cemeteries, and some of them are in people's yards. They come back there every winter. So people have named these birds in their yard, and they're really site specific. And so they have this great public event where they do a citizen science survey, winter survey of black-bellied Pacific golden plovers. And so everybody does this survey and they get a record of how many birds they can track what they're doing. So it's pretty cool. Next slide. So they captured some birds using a net gun where it has a net and it shoots it out and it captures the bird, and put these geolocators on. And they found that they were flying from Hawaii to Alaska, 3 days, about 3,000 miles. The problem was, once they used that net gun walking around in the field, the birds, when they came back, the birds going, we're not getting near those people. So then they had to do a drive-by shooting. They drove by in cars and shot the net. Because the birds got so the net doesn't hurt the bird, it just envelops it. But anyway, so yeah, 3,000 miles, average speed 39 miles an hour, but one bird hit a speed of 115 miles an hour. So apparently it was up high in the jet stream. So then they said, well, what are birds doing that go farther out the island? So they went out to Marshall Island and said, okay, I wonder what these birds are doing. How fast did it take them to get to Alaska? They put geolocator tags on and they were shocked that the birds went to Japan first. Nobody knew that. And so they went to Japan, stayed there, and then back to Alaska. So the next year they sent some Japanese ornithologists out there and they found them in these rice paddies in during migration. So that's pretty cool information. Next photo. This is a bristle-thighed curlew. These birds traditionally are winter out in the islands. Next photo. There's the wintering places. The two brick-colored areas is where they winter, and then the yellow is where they stage, and then they leave the Yukon Delta. Next slide. This is where they breed. This is one of the breeding areas about 3 hours outside of Nome. And they breed low on the slope, but early in the morning they come up and fly around. Well, early in the morning there is sunrise is 3 and sunset's 1. So you have 2 hours and it's a 3-hour drive. And we were totally burned out from photographs. So some of us had seen this bird before. So we're not going to go out. We're not going to leave before sunset to get there by sunrise. We went out later in the morning hoping we could see them. Next slide. And this is, again, they're breeding low on the slopes and they come and fly around up on the top here. So this is a well-known site to see these birds, and there were 2 van loads of birders from the Massachusetts Audubon Society, and they were there because this is one of the places, the few places to see them in Alaska, and so everybody's looking around and nobody's having any luck. Next photo. So we found 3 birds off to the side. We got to looking at them. They're wimbrels. They're not bristle-thighed curlews. So we were disappointed. We thought, well, we'll just sit here, and when all those people leave, then we'll see if we can sneak up closer and get good pictures of these wimbrel. Well, somebody saw us looking at these birds through binoculars. Next slide. And they all raced over there. This is only part of the group. And they're all high-fiving and they're thanking us. And we didn't have the heart to tell them that they were wimbrels. If they thought they were bristle-thighed curlews, and more power to them. So, and you actually can see the bristle thighs here. See the little feathers that are sticking down. Okay. So this is the only shorebird that winters specifically in the Pacific Islands. No other shorebird does that. This is their Midway Island is up here, so that's as far north as it gets. So this is their wintering area. Next slide. And it's the only shorebird that loses all its flight feathers simultaneously. It becomes flightless, and they do this on the wintering ground. And the bad news for them is on many of these islands, people have introduced cats, rats, dogs, mongoose. And so if they land on an island like that and go flightless, they're gone. So their population has been greatly reduced for that reason alone. Yeah. There's a conservation society that does nothing but removes predators from islands. Island conservation. They talk about great restoration because they take these animals off the island and then they instant birds. Really good stuff. Okay. So one of the new things that has come about is modus, and modus in Latin means movement. And this is a modus tower, and it can reach out about 12 miles if there's no obstructions. And they tag birds. When the bird flies past the modus tower, it records it and sends it to the internet to a database. And it was started in 2013 by the Canadians. But now it's spread worldwide, and the United States is jumping in big time. And there's a modus tower at Grace Harbor, Willapa Bay. We have one at Cape Mears. We're going to put one up at Newport. There's one at Bandon, and we yesterday put one up at New River. So they're going up, and we're learning some really amazing data. Next photo. So those yellow dots represent all the currently active towers. And again, there's one now here. There's going to be one in Newport soon, and Cape Perpetua's put one up. So once you put it up, it just kind of just sits there and does its thing. It just records it. Bird flies by, records it. Next photo. Oh, there's just a close up. You can see there's a few up here. None in the Portland area. You have to go up to Olympia. The Salem Audubon Society put one up at Ankeny National Wildlife Refuge. This one is not operational at Eugene. Okay. So this is a Dunlin. It was marked at Yuba City, down in the Sacramento Valley, went down to the San Joaquin Valley, and then up to Alaska and disappeared. This fall it came back and it was recorded at Bandon. And then 18 hours, 34 minutes, and 41 seconds later, 359 miles, it was down at Napa Marshes. So birds don't fly straight lines. All we can tell is it hit this tower and then this tower. We don't know the route. And I looked at some other data on Dunlins, and I'm pretty sure it came down the coast and cut inland. And, but, so we know the minimum distance and the time it took to get there. So pretty remarkable information. Next photo. Here's a Dunlin that it started again down in this area, went up. It actually went up to Oregon, I think it hit the Ankeny Tower, and then it made this 1,200-mile flight in 1 day, 18 hours, 52 minutes and 2 seconds, to just south of the Copper River Delta. But it came back this fall, and it was recorded at Boundary Bay, British Columbia, and then it flew for 20 hours, 24 minutes, 52 seconds, and went through Bandon, didn't stop, kept going, another 157 miles at least, and 4 hours, 9 minutes, 7 seconds to Humboldt Bay. So really, really cool stuff. We're learning stuff, and some of the Dunlin are going up through the Willamette Valley. A lot of them are cutting over and hitting the Bandon Tower. So we're learning all kinds of stuff. It's really pretty cool. So what got me interested and excited about Motus was this species. This is a Swainson's thrush. And up in Whistler, BC, they're doing a lot of research. Some grad students are, because on the eastern side of the mountain range, it's the greenback subspecies that mostly goes to the east. And on the west side, it's a russetback subspecies that mostly come down this way. And then there's a hybrid zone. So they've marked hundreds of birds up there. And so this bird came down from Whistler, hit different towers in the Puget Sound, came down, hit a tower at Willapa Bay, then it hit Bandon. And then this will show you where it hit next, North Carolina. But this is a bird that's going to South America. And it's like, holy cow. So I'm thinking, okay, there's an error here, something's wrong. So I went into their site and looked at their data, and 9 birds from the same project arrived the same day at North Carolina. Phenomenal. Who knew? Next slide. Here's a bird from that same project. It went a different way. It was first recorded in Wisconsin, dropped down to the Panhandle of Florida, and then realized it had overshot North Carolina, then flew back to North Carolina before it flew south and hit a tower in Columbia. It's like, what the heck? Pretty amazing. So we're learning this great stuff. Now, next photo will show you why it might be better to fly. So Bandon right here, red dot. And so with the curvature of the earth, it's probably a shorter distance to go this way than to go all the way down this way. So, we look at maps and orient it, east-west. Bird has a different perspective. So, okay. And Bartel Godwit, I told you about the southbound migration. I haven't told you how they get back. Next slide. So they circumvent around the entire Pacific. So they go from New Zealand to Japan to Bohai Bay in the Yellow Sea, stayed there for 6 weeks. That's a nonstop flight of 6,300 miles, and then another 4,500 back to Alaska. So this bird was the record holder when they first started marking birds. And this bird just in this migration flew over 18,000 miles. Okay. And this just shows the return flight. So they're doing nonstop coming down here, then on the way back, they hop to here, back to here. The Russian birds are actually stopping at the Yellow Sea twice. They come down here, stage down to the Western Australia, and then back up. Okay. And in 2017, we had 17 to 22 birds come ashore in Oregon, which is really rare because they're flying from China to Alaska. And this one was fully marked, and we got the information on them, how old it was when it was banded in New Zealand. And I did the math on this guy and figured up till the time I took this photo, it had flown at least 300,000 miles in migration. So it went to the moon, it's on its way back. Next photo. So in 2020, the researcher in New Zealand emailed us, said, hey, another bird's headed your way. We're tracking it by satellite and left China, and it's coming across the Pacific. The way it's going right now, it's going to hit Oregon. Next photo. Sorry, this is a small image here, but this is the bird here. And notice a big low pressure system here. So we think birds, when they leave China, get in a storm system and just get off track. So next photo will show what this bird did. It got in it followed those winds, and then it came ashore in southeast Alaska, so we didn't get to see it. But within less than a week, it was back on the Yukon Delta, where it had been trying to get to the whole time. Like it's got this internal GPS system that tells it where to go. Pretty amazing. Okay. Lots of threats to shorebirds, predators like peregrine falcons, like so. This is a pair of birds that was just minding their own business and they saw a peregrine way to the north, next photo. So they try to act like they're part of the debris on the beach. Next photo, when a peregrine gets too close, then, the birds go into this tremendous flight where they stay in a big flock. Next photo, flashing back and forth. So they're trying to confuse the peregrine. They're all trying to stay together. If you wander outside the flock, your chances of being picked off are pretty good. Okay. These surf birds got surprised by a peregrine, so they all dove into the water to try to escape. And here's a peregrine that went ahead with a red phalarope that it captured. Pretty easy prey for him with just one bird. And we have merlins hunting along the beach. If you look at this bird, it's got a kind of a bloody belly here, so he's been eating. And northern harriers are really good at catching birds too. Most people don't realize that, but here he just captured a western sandpiper. And oil is really bad for birds. You can see this black oil here, it's down the leg and a little bit on the face. This is not a major oil spill. There's a lot of little releases, discharges at sea, and this amount of oil is lethal to this bird because that water's gonna get directly to the skin and chill that bird down. So he's already stressed. So it doesn't take much, and there's a lot of these mystery little things floating around out there. So I was admiring this photo of this semi-pointed plover, and then I was really depressed when I pulled back from the bird and looked at all that plastic in the photo. There's all sorts of colored plastic around this bird. And the creel off of Oregon are loaded with plastic, and the gray whales at summer here feed on that. And so the OSU research scientists estimate that each gray whale is consuming 12 to 13 million micro bits of plastic every day along Oregon. And your 1 liter of water that you purchase at the store in a plastic bottle contains 420,000 micrograms of plastic that's floating in that water. So pretty ugly picture. Okay. My pet peeve is dogs off leash that are chasing shorebirds. I've told you how hard these birds work. They need every microgram of fat they can get. Every day I'm on the beach, there's dogs off leash and the shorebirds are being chased and harassed. It's terrible. Next photo. And your dog's either supposed to be on a leash or under voice control. And when I've talked to some of these people, when it's done scaring the birds totally off the beach, then it'll come back to the owners and see, I called it back, it came. Like it's done all the damage. So, and I got bit one day by one of the dogs off the leash. Next photo. So if you bring your dog to the beach and there's birds, keep it on a leash. Next photo. Next photo. It's not uncommon. Okay, the next photo shows your dog on a leash and walk along, and there are 7 snowy plovers in this photo, and they're not disturbed at all. Next photo will show you a dot next to each bird. They're just sitting there and they're perfectly fine. So it just shows you if your dog's on a leash, it's not a threat. As soon as it goes off a leash, it's a predator to those birds and they're freaked out. Okay. So, great to come to the coast. I already told you the best times. Last week, April, first week of May. August is a good time when lots of birds are moving through. Next photo. Really, really fun to be out there with the birds. Next photo. I watched these 2 women walking down the beach and they had their eye these birds. Next photo. And then they're up wheeling around and they're kind of, you see they're a little apprehensive, next photo. And then look at this lady's got her hands over her head because she's sure they're going to fly into them. And the other lady's trying to act brave. She's like, no, they won't hit us. And they do, they just go around us. And if the northwest wind is blowing in the morning and it's that late April, early May, if the northwest wind is blowing hard in the morning, go out to the beach because they're going to be coming right down the beach. Over the sand, and they're literally several inches above the sand. You get great looks at them. Next photo. And this is a movie showing birds coming down the beach. Here comes a flock here. The northwest wind blowing. It's a black-bellied plover in the lead, a dunlin, and then western sandpipers. Okay, let's play the next photo, the next video. They're going to split and go both sides of me. Really fun. And often they come really close. They're on a mission. Okay. Oops, sorry. All right, so now ran over. Sorry. I just want to end the program with some running photos of shorebirds. See if you can identify them. There's a few ringers in there. Okay, let her go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two species of turnstiles.
So what would it be?
Everybody does this.
Snowy
one.
plover.
Western,
Yep.
is that a red knot?
There was 1,000 up there when you went and looked at them. Mixed flock. Breeding plumage surfbird. Peeps. That's a bared sandpiper. That's a ringer nobody will get. That's a stilt sandpiper taken in Florida. Taking a bath. Mark Godwit and a Wimbrow. Ruddy turnstone, those things are really brilliant. Belchers. Longwood. Winter plumage, sanderly. Dunlop walking on the ice.
Juvenile.
Oyster catchers. Marble Godwit coming into breeding plumage. Juvenile American golden plumage. That's a tough one.
Is that the only ocean ball?
No, that's a Pacific golden plover. This one's going to South America. Anybody know what that is? This is its head. It's a killdeer. Bar-tailed Godwit and a Wimbrow. There's another ringer. This is a Hudsonian Godwit, normally seen in the middle of it. And those are red knots. Peeps. Well, peeps, mostly western sandpipers. Black-bellied plovers. In Europe and Asia, they're called gray plovers, and that's a small gray bird. They're in wintertime, so it's a good name. Belchers, Dunlin, and semi-palmated plovers. Rock sandpiper. Ringed plover. Marble godwits. Next still. Just coming into breeding plumage of red knot. Being stalked by a sanderly. You can't see me, snowy plover. This is a dancing bared sandpiper. Western sandpiper's taking a nap. The sanderling found a mole crab that he's trying to figure out how to eat. That harrier was coming and they're getting out of there. Black-bellied plovers and the sanderling on the far right. Yeah, amazing abilities. Mountain plover. We don't get to see many of these on the coast. That was 2013. There's a fall buff-breasted sandpiper on the beach. Least sandpiper, see those yellow legs? Ooh, that's interesting. That's a willet. Another bird we don't see too much up here on the coast. Wilson's plover from Texas. Few are seen in Oregon occasionally. We all know this bird. Dunlin. Snowy plover on top of the mountain. Laying down on a job. Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
About, if sir, you are familiar with the, or no, research that we do with the navigation of birds, like brain research.
I've heard different theories, but I'm not really up to speed on that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's magnetic field, there's stars, oftentimes you can't see the stars, so, you know, so there's gotta be a combination of things that, how does that bird go from, you know, Alaska to New Zealand, you know, it'd be really easy to miss even a continent, you know, if you're out in the middle of the Pacific, so.
Do you have a book out?
No,
You're ready. Nice job.
I just have fun taking photos, you know, I worked for the government for 37 years and there's a fair amount of politics and people that hate us and all that stuff. So now politics are gone. I can go lay on the beach and take 2 days to figure out what the bands are on the snowy clover, you know, so it's pretty fun. Yeah, you bet.